It's 6:30 a.m.
Stop being slid around. Yeah, you can hear it. Yeah.
Armed police are on the first floor of a house in Cornwall, searching for a murderer.
Police were called to Victoria Square in the early hours.
A man in his 30s was confirmed deceased at the scene. His next of kin have been informed.
Michael Allen has been described by all who know him as a gentle giant.
He was my big baby brother. He was my protector.
And it still feels like he's with you now.
Yeah, because he won't leave me. He won't leave me.
A number of people had sustained suspected stab wounds.
Stop, sort the out! Please!
I think he has severed my main artery in my leg, and I don't think I'm going to make it.
Stay down! Stay down!
You showed not a shred of remorse then. You have shown not a shred of remorse since.
Jake, listen to me! You're under arrest for murder and 2 attempted murders.
This is our soapbox race course. We're about to get the soapbox on the go.
What do we need to know about Mike and cars?
Mike loved cars. It was his real passion. This would have been his dream.
It's 4 months since a night of unthinkable violence in Bodmin claimed the life of Michael Ridioff Allen.
We've got tyre throw, wheelbarrow races and car drag.
His friends and family have organised a car show as part of an anti-knife crime campaign in Michael's name.
We don't want to see anyone else getting hurt. So, you know, hopefully we've got a little bit of that message out today.
How did you first meet Mike?
Oh God, in a car park, chatting about some terrible 90s hot hatch probably. Mike was like a brother to me, really.
Mike loved everything. Mike was great. He was the happiest guy, and he'd be there as soon as you'd ring him to help you. He was straight in.
So Mike and I, not your average siblings, we were stupidly close.
When you really needed him, when you rang up and said, Mike, I need help, he was there. He was just a lovable bear that we all adored.
He was naturally just gregarious, generous, helpful soul.
Michael's night begins at Bodmin Rugby Club.
It was the end of season annual dinner. So we all come out, we celebrate, we bring partners, friends, family. We had a nice meal. Yeah, it's just a really, really good night. I'm second row, Mike was a centre, so he's one of the fitter ones. He'd run head first into contact and just put his body on the line, and yeah, just good to be around on the pitch. The night was that good that everyone wanted it to carry on. A few of us sort of went into town. We managed to get a quick drink in other places, and then it was sort of time to go to the Eclipse.
It's Bodmin's only nightclub. It's one of those locations which you can go into and you're likely to see other members of your community, your friendship groups, associates, and kind of bump into people that you know.
Ryan Berger and 2 of his friends are also in the club.
It was a very impulsive decision. It wasn't pre-planned. Never had issues there before, so it was no second thoughts. It was, oh yeah, let's go.
It was just one of those nights where everything was just going so well.
There was no suspicion of any trouble inside that we noticed.
Everyone was getting along, everyone was having a laugh. Yeah, we were all mingling with each other. Yeah, just a really great night.
Also arriving at the club is 21-year-old Tia Taylor. She's there after arranging a last-minute babysitter for her 2 children. Jake Hill, a carpenter and a father to a 10-month-old boy, has spent the evening at a pub in nearby Wadebridge. He bumps into Chelsea Powell, a mother of 2, who he hasn't seen for 10 years. They arrive at the Eclipse together shortly before midnight.
They do have quite a significant security presence, actually. We see from the CCTV the use of a metal detector body wand. Those entering the premises are searched.
It's closing time. Outside, Michael waits for his friends. He appears calm and relaxed. Jake Hill, Tia Taylor and Chelsea Powell leave together. A taxi dashcam captures what happens next. Hill goes to a hedge and retrieves a knife. He'd hidden it there before going into the club.
You see Jake Hill run over to the side of the road where there's bushes. He is actively looking for something. You see him take his phone out. He's using the light on his phone as a makeshift flashlight to assist. And then you see him stop and beckon over Chelsea Powell, Tia Taylor, the group that are with him.
It's a 17-centimetre combat knife, which he'd bought from a friend a few days before, and is wearing on a work belt over his shoulder.
So I think that he was deliberately carrying that knife on him, and that he wore it in such a way to signify that actually he was quite comfortable and quite proud almost to be in possession of such a knife.
And then there was just a small little fight outside the street. We just went out to break it up, and that's when it sort of went into chaos.
And when we looked down, just down the road, there was a big scuffle.
We know that there was low-level disorder taking place outside of the Eclipse. As more and more people have left the Eclipse, they have got involved to either try and separate things, disperse things, intervene in some way, and that's then resulted in pockets of disorder taking place, and it kind of spiraled, to be honest.
We thought one of our friends might have been involved, and that's when we walked down to go and see if he is actually involved.
Jake Hill is seen running towards the fighting, closely followed by the 2 women. At some point, Jake Hill gets out his knife. In just 10 seconds, the first 4 victims are stabbed. Rhiannon Thompsett, a childhood friend of Hill's, Stephen Williams and his friend Ryan Berger, and Liam Phillips, who was with the rugby club group.
From the side, you could hear Liam. He shouted he'd been stabbed.
Out, please.
And at that point, you could see the cut, and you thought, what's happening? Why here? What's going on?
Ryan Berger is badly hurt.
I can't physically remember what happened at the point I got stabbed. I just walked over back to the club because there was a light. I think under one of these lights were on somewhere. So because it was very dark down there, I could feel something was wrong with my leg, but I couldn't see what was going on. When I got here, I saw the amount of blood that was coming out was quite excessive. And then one of the doormen, I think, came over to me, and he tried to put his belt around my leg. It's like somewhere here. He tried to put the belt around my leg. With the amount of blood that was coming out of my leg, I didn't think that I would make it. The only thing that went through my mind at that time was, I want to phone my parents. I was with my mom on the phone, and she started crying, and I said to her, she must please be strong. She must tell my dad and my brother and my sister that I love them dearly and that it will be all okay.
After some of the fights sort of broke down the street, I looked back up, I saw Mike on the floor. At that point, it sort of went up. He was still breathing. We put him into recovery position.
Michael has been stabbed once in the lower abdomen. It's a deep wound. 2 major arteries have been severed.
It was about 5 minutes after. We were trying to calm them all down, and we heard counting. And then that's when I looked back and saw people doing CPR on Mike. And I sort of went over, said if they needed a hand. One of the girls, I think she worked at the Eclipse, she said, yeah, please. And I took over CPR until the paramedics turned up. And then they put the defib on. They connected it up and it said no shock advised. And that's when I knew that was it. He wasn't there. 2 minutes later, we looked back and they put the sheet there over him. And that's when it hit. So take a minute.
Witnesses said Michael died as he lived. A gentle giant who took on a man with a knife to try to help others.
Michael takes hold of Jake Hill and what I can only describe as kind of like an arm bar, so keeping at a distance. I believe that he's seen that Jake had a knife, that he's decided to intervene, try and remove the threat from that group, and yeah, ultimately paid the price with his life.
He was a hero. He done what he could to isolate the situation, but he paid the ultimate sacrifice. So yeah, he's a hero.
A number of calls were received shortly after 3 o'clock in the morning, so the local police units are dispatched. They were met with absolutely probably one of the most chaotic scenes that those officers would have faced in their career. A significant amount of people with traumatic injuries. We know that tragically one person has lost their life and it is going to be a murder investigation. The overwhelming kind of storyline was that Jake Hill had stabbed a number of people and that he had a knife and that he had left the scene. Time is of the essence, really, that we need to locate that individual and bring them into custody.
Just 3 hours after the stabbings, armed police are at the house of Tia Taylor, one of the women Jake Hill left the club with. They've been told he's inside.
You don't actually know what you're going into when you go into that property.
Stop being slid around. Yeah, you can hear it. Yeah.
You know that you are potentially coming into close proximity with someone that has potentially murdered someone and caused significant serious injuries to a number of other people.
Stay down! Stay down!
It would have taken a number of seconds just to register that you haven't actually got someone coming towards you in an aggressive manner and it is actually him falling. So they conducted themselves with absolute professionalism.
Jake, listen to me. You're under arrest for murder and 2 attempted murders. You don't need to say anything. When they hold defence, you don't mention when questioned something later on in court.
16 miles away, the Cornish fishing port of Padstow is waking up.
I was on a little family weekend to celebrate Padstow May Day with my husband's family, and I went to church in the morning and I had a tap on the shoulder saying your husband's outside. So I go out and he said, you need to ring your dad. And I said, is it Nan? He went, no. I went, it's Michael, isn't it? And he said, you just need to ring your dad. So I was just stood in the church grounds, my husband desperately trying to get me to a bench, knowing that my world was about to fall apart. And all my dad managed to say was Michael's been stabbed and he didn't make it. And my world just collapsed.
A 24-year-old man from Bodmin's been arrested on suspicion of murder, and magistrates have this morning granted a 36-hour extension for him to be questioned.
The knife was later recovered from an extractor fan in the kitchen. Hill had put it there after trying to flush it down the toilet. This is him stashing it in the sheath, which he'd attached to the belt he was wearing over his shoulder as he left the crime scene with Taylor and Powell.
The first interview, he completely denied any involvement, any knowledge. So he accepted that he had been in the vicinity, but that had left without becoming involved in anything. When he was presented with the fact that we had recovered the knife, he stated that he had lied or not provided the truth in his previous account because he was scared, and claimed that he was acting in self-defence.
Tia Taylor and Chelsea Powell are also now under investigation because of evidence they joined in the attack on Michael.
You see Tia Taylor running in, and you see her join Jake Hill, followed pretty much at the same time by Chelsea Powell. She's a little bit more difficult to see. You see Tia Taylor strike Michael to the head a number of times. I think at one point he's on his hands and knees while she's leaning over him and continues to strike him before eventually he's able to get to his feet, take a couple of steps, and then fatally falls to the floor.
The police decide Tia Taylor and Chelsea Powell should be charged with joint enterprise murder.
You don't need to be the person who carries the weapon. If you are acting with them, supporting them, then you are just as culpable.
As police prepare to arrest the two women, Michael's family prepares to say goodbye. Hundreds of his friends and family attend his funeral. Some 50 cars join the convoy behind his hearse.
I was in the family car, and the chauffeur said he'd been doing the job for many years and never had he seen anything like what Michael had in all that time.
All the cars that followed him from Dodballs to Bodmin, it's love. It is love.
He was my big baby brother. He was my protector.
And it still feels like he's with you now.
Yeah, because he won't leave me. He won't leave me. Sorry.
How can we remember Mike and be true to a man who was always there for people, always cared? We can't let this lie. We can't let this be the end.
The jury in the trial of 3 people accused of the murder of a man outside a nightclub in Bodmin last April has been sworn in.
The trial is listed for 8 weeks. Michael's family watch the case every day.
For me, there was lots of discrepancies in his story. Nothing personally for me really added up.
The way he told his story was so much calmer, so much less violent than what we believe to be the truth, and I would have liked for that to be true, because I would have liked to think that Michael's last moments weren't this whirlwind of chaos, and actually it was all just a big mistake.
I'm just going to go and have a look and see if we've got a bumper.
In a garage near Bodmin, Michael's friends are finishing the rebuild of the dream car he'd designed.
I don't know how we're going to make it work, but we're going to try. How am I processing the court case? Truthfully, probably not very well. I've got my wife and this group around me to support me. Is this helping? Absolutely.
I think the hardest part is watching the CCTV and just seeing his last moments. We saw some happy moments before that final moment with him unravelling his hair and just generally being Mike. However hard it is, we're still so incredibly proud of him. He was being Mike right up until the end.
That's not a big job.
So that one, you've just written that up.
We need to remember him in the best ways. We don't need to look at what was and be sad for what we don't have anymore. We need to look at what we had and be glad that we had those times together because, you know, God, we were lucky to have him.
Michael's dad, Kevin, has been talking to the defendants' families at court. He's hoping they can work together against knife crime.
What we're conscious of as a family is the relatives of the defendants, they are now discovering the horror. They are now seeing how it was going wrong. They are now seeing what was occurring that night. And we feel for them. They're sort of like comrades on this journey. You know, friends is a strong word, but we have been thrown together. Having them sat there is in no way, doesn't bring out any sense of anger or anything. All it does is actually bring out a sense of sharing their pain, which I know they are feeling.
Halfway through the trial, Tia Taylor admits manslaughter and perverting the course of justice. Chelsea Powell convinces the jury she didn't know about the knife. She's cleared of manslaughter, but found guilty of perverting the course of justice. Jake Hill is found guilty of Michael's murder. He's also convicted of stabbing Liam Phillips, Rhiannon Thompsett, Stefan Williams, and Ryan Berger, who all survived their injuries but are still traumatised by what happened.
There are no winners here. It's not just our family who lost someone that they loved that night. The families of Tia Taylor, Chelsea Powell and Jake Hill have all been torn apart by the evil of that night, the presence of a knife. Michael watched the violence unfold in front of him. He felt the need to intervene, to remove the threat and protect others. In this task, he lost his life. We stand here together as a warning. If a change does not happen, then many more families will stand on court steps, broken from the loss that knife crime brings. We stand here together to beg you, leave it in the drawer.
Did you believe him when he said that he didn't know how much harm he could do with a knife?
No. Never have I led on an investigation that involved a knife of that nature. I think you look at it and you can only assume that someone is intending to cause serious harm or death.
Jake Hill, stand up. For the murder of Michael Allen, I sentence you to life imprisonment.
Jake Hill is jailed for life with a minimum term of 28 years. Tia Taylor is sentenced to 3 years. Chelsea Powell is given a sentence of 15 months.
Were it not for the quick thinking of one of the doormen in applying a tourniquet, I have no doubt that you would be facing sentence for the murders of 2 men.
If it wasn't for the people that was there that night that actually assisted me till the point I got to the hospital, I don't think I would have made it. Emotionally, it's been tough when you think you've got to say goodbye for your loved ones.
What do you say to those who are still carrying knives?
No other life is more important than yours. By using that knife and taking someone else's life means that you think that your life is more important than his, and it's not. We're all human, we're all the same.